What if protecting your heart was simpler than you thought? Could small daily changes be the key to a longer, healthier life? I'm Savannah Schaus, here with my brilliant co-host, Dr. Jay Rutland, and today we're diving into a topic that literally beats at the center of your life: heart health. Heart disease is the leading cause of death worldwide, which is staggering, right? But here's the good news. So much of it is preventable. The choices we make every day can either protect our hearts or put them at risk. So whether you're here to take charge of your own health or to help someone you love, stick around. This is the Health Exchange, and your heart will thank you for it. So we're very excited to welcome Professor Dustin Moore to the Health Exchange today. Dustin is a dietitian with experience in scientific communication, education, and public health. Dustin, thanks for being here.
Thank you all very much for having me onto the show today. Appreciate it.
Welcome, man. We're excited to dig into it.
Definitely. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What got you to this point?
Yeah, absolutely. So I work currently as an assistant director for the graduate program in applied nutrition and dietetics, not too far away from here over at Cal State Long Beach. I've worked in education for a long time doing program reviews. I do a lot of scientific writing and communication. Love talking about food, love talking about agriculture, food systems, and everything that has to do with the stuff that we eat. And when I am not busy working, you'll find me in my backyard firing up a wood-fired pizza oven.
Yes.
Or probably at Disneyland, because our family are big-time fanatics for going out there and doing that.
I'm going to Disneyland next Saturday.
Stop it.
Yeah,
I haven't taken either of my kids yet to Disneyland, so don't judge me.
Really?
I know.
Okay. We'll
Maybe we do like
schedule a date and plan a date where we can all go there and show up. Yes.
Show me how to make it.
Disneyland is unbelievable. I love Disneyland.
Get steps. Get a lot of steps in.
So you're a professor.
Yes.
So you teach in college.
Yes.
I mean, like, is that something that you always wanted to do as a little kid? Or
Absolutely not. I had absolutely no intention of going this direction. It's been very much delightful, but not what I had originally prescribed. I wanted to get into law enforcement when I was a kid. I wanted to become a cop or a FBI officer or something like that.
Okay.
And then it just went a completely different direction as I had this initial love of the sciences. And then I got bigger and I got a little bit meaner. And I thought, okay, let's put this meanness to use. But I had some really good guidance, really good people in my life. And I decided to not go that direction. And I decided to instead just look at the sciences. And after looking around and looking at career paths and what you could do, I eventually landed on this field called dietetics, which I had never heard of before I got to college.
Yeah.
And once I learned about what those people do, something about it just clicked.
Yeah.
That's
Something
so
about
good.
it just clicked for me, and I just thought, this is what I want to do. This is going to be some sweet meat and potatoes for me, to use an
found
analogy
your
about
calling.
it. Yeah, I guess so, in some sense. Dietitians work in a lot of capacities. We work as clinicians. We work in food service settings. We work in community settings. And I had thought I wanted to go the route of working as a clinician, but the opportunity to work in education, to actually teach classes, just came as a unanticipated opportunity, and I jumped on board it. And when I did it, I loved it, and I wanted to keep going with it and jump into it from there.
That's great.
Yeah.
Love that.
Absolutely amazing.
So we're talking about a subject today that you know is near and dear to my heart. As a cardiology nurse practitioner, we're going to talk about heart disease. More specifically, we're going to talk about what that looks like in regards to nutrition. So I feel like we're blessed to have you today. You're going to kind of be our connector between heart disease and nutrition, and hopefully we can find some tips to provide to our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely.
On how they can manage their heart health even better.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah. So Dr. Rutland, do you want to kind of jump in and start us off with what is heart disease? Tell us about the heart structure a little bit.
Sure.
We'll take it from there.
Yeah, I mean, I think whenever we think about the heart, we all know that it's a muscle that sits kind of in the center of your chest or in the center of your body, and it's pumping blood all around the body. So when you think about the heart, we think about the heart really in a couple of different ways. The heart has 4 chambers and 2 sides. One side of the heart pumps blood to the lung, and that's where oxygenation takes place. And then the other side of the heart pumps blood to the rest of the body, first up to the brain, then back to itself, and then to the rest of the body. And when you think about the heart pumping blood back to itself, right, there are 3 major pipes that give the heart muscle its nutrition, right? And when you think about heart disease, right, and the number 1 killer worldwide, we're talking about disease in those 3 major pipes, right? We're talking about narrowing in those major pipes, which leads to a lack of nutrition for the heart muscle, and then that muscle starts to die off, and then you can develop other types of heart diseases, right?
Right.
Heart failure, cardiomyopathy, because the muscle can't squeeze as much. So that muscle squeezes just a little bit, and you get a little bit of blood moving forward. And then that blood and fluid stays back, and we see a lot of lung disease from that, right? You see fluid in the lung and things like that. And as a pulmonary critical care physician, that's what I see a whole lot of.
Oh, yeah.
I see heart failure. I see pulmonary edema. And then there's more serious illnesses that you see in the intensive care unit after a heart attack, or myocardial infarction, which is acute occlusion of one of those pipes. And, I think understanding that aspect of it, understanding how the heart actually is working, really provides value to individuals so they can think about making healthier decisions when it comes to protecting their heart.
Yeah, definitely. When we're talking about heart disease, we're encompassing a lot of different conditions, right? So oftentimes we think of coronary artery disease first and foremost. But like you said, then you're getting to valvular issues, you're getting into heart failure, cardiomyopathies. So all of these conditions are there's an umbrella effect here. And then that's why we see that this is the leading cause of death globally. So statistically, I think we're at 702,000 people every year die from heart disease, which is 1 in 5 essentially. Meaning that this is a topic that we need to tackle and take seriously.
And that's just in the United States.
That's just in the United States. Yeah.
And it's leading head above every other cause of death. Like, it doesn't even come close. It's heart disease and then cancer, which is a slightly fewer deaths compared to heart disease. And then I think the next one below that is lung disease or...
lung and respiratory conditions are like 6.
But it's much
worldwide.
lower. Like, it's all of a sudden a huge jump when it goes up to the top killer, which is heart disease.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah.
Let's dive into risk factors.
Yeah.
Right? We know that there's a genetic component and there's a lifestyle component. Why don't you touch on the genetic component, and maybe you could give us a little insight on the lifestyle?
When you look in your body, right, your body has a genetic code, right? And this is DNA. And DNA is responsible for building the proteins in your body that are going to allow you to kind of be yourself, clean out the food that you're eating, function in your body. So there are genetic risk factors as it pertains to heart disease, because there are certain proteins in our body that are responsible for basically carrying fat all around our body. And then there are genetic deficiencies or genetic issues in some individual families that actually lead to an increase in some of what we call bad cholesterol, which is a huge risk for heart disease,
Most
right?
definitely.
Or an increase in other molecules that are somewhat related to bad cholesterol and can have the same kind of an impact on your body. And so genetically speaking, there's not much individuals can do about that. You can't really
change your genes.
genetics,
Yeah.
right? But
go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I like to think about it as the genes are the foundation. You can't change it. They are what they are. You want to know them.
Yeah.
You want to know your family history. You want to know who's had a heart attack, mom, dad, siblings, because then you can make some changes in your own life. But the genes are going to be the foundation, and then the lifestyle aspect, that's where we can make some modifications.
Right. And that's what you teach every single day of your life.
That is what we teach. That is what we discuss. Yes.
And so in your courses, right, when you're teaching your college students, do you talk about the specific genetic abnormalities that lead to heart disease?
Not really. I mean, if there's one example in particular, there is a condition that's called hypercholesterolemia, familiar hypercholesterolemia, which is where there is a defect in your body's ability to produce specific proteins and specific particles inside the bloodstream, which just basically increases the lipids, increases the fats that are in the blood, and put people at higher risk. But beyond that, it gets into other therapies, which are not really what most average students, your average freshman, is not going to be able to stay awake long enough for to discuss.
Yeah.
A good indicator to touch on that too for our audience. If you go to your primary care doctor and you get your cholesterol drawn, and they're drawing your LDL, which is your bad cholesterol, and that number, right, we usually want it to be under 100, exceeds 190, that classifies you under this category. So if you have an LDL level and it's like 200, this is genetics. You got this passed down to you, but that's the patient that needs lifestyle and probably medical attention with statin therapy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a statin therapy, what Savannah's talking about when she says statin therapy, these are medications that will lower that LDL level, right, and help metabolize that bad cholesterol. And when we bring that LDL level down, it brings your risk down of an actual heart attack, which is kind of what we want to do. But from a dietary standpoint, what kinds of things should individuals be doing?
Okay, so before we go into that, I want to just really quickly dial it back and just talk about the two risks that are at play for what ultimately leads to the development of heart disease. So plaque formation is the major problem, where you have arteries that are carrying blood through everything, and these things called plaques form on the interior lining of the wall, narrows it out, makes it difficult for stuff to go, as you already mentioned and talked about, Jamie. So there's realistically these two things at play. On the one hand, you have the interior lining of the arteries, that's called the intima, and the intima can be stickier, it can be more diffusive, where things get into it, get trapped in it. And then the second are these particles that travel through the bloodstream. And when both of these factors are healthy, when they're strong, then that's a person who's lower in risk for heart disease. But if both of them, either of them, are starting to have problems, so for example, your intima is more absorptive of particles and there's more particles in the blood, that becomes a major problem for people. There's a really good analogy, which is always helpful for students. Really good analogy is to think of that intima lining as like a shield, and to think of the particles in the bloodstream as like bullets. So if I have a really thick shield in front of me and there's a couple of bullets, that's ideal conditions. My body is able to deflect it. It doesn't have plaque formation. I am low risk for developing heart disease. But if I have more bullets, if I have more of those particles that are going through, I'm more likely to get hit by one. And if my shield is weaker, which could be as a result of lifestyle factors or because of genetic conditions that you unfortunately inherit from your family, then all of a sudden I'm high risk and I'm more likely for these plaque formations to occur and then ultimately having a heart disease diagnosis.
So, love that analogy.
What can you tell them to eat? What can you tell them? These are the types of things that I think you should be eating based on the possibility of developing heart disease. Because when you think about it, as we all age, as we all, what I like to say, gain life experience, right? the arteries are going to naturally deteriorate a little bit, right? So some of this stuff is just natural progression of life. But to kind of hold that off or keep it as healthy as we can,
definitely,
what should we be eating?
Okay, so in terms of the diet, what the diet does for us is mostly affecting the number of particles, the size of the particles that are going to be inside the bloodstream. So the ones that are top contenders that we assess for risk of heart disease are going to be HDL and LDL, high density lipoprotein, low density lipoprotein. And the foods that you consume ultimately affect how much of those your body's producing and is coursing through your veins, through your bloodstream. So the foods in general that you want to be consuming more of, fruits and vegetables. I'm going to say this a lot.
Tell us all this time.
I'm going to repeat this over and over again, and the hand gestures are going to come out. Fruit and vegetables are going to do wonders both for reversal of plaque formation, soft plaque formation, as well as reducing your risk overall of developing heart disease in the future. That's probably top of the list. Next up on the list is going to be legumes, beans, lentils, because they have a twofold effect of providing the body with lots of fiber, which we like. Most Americans hardly, I think the recent statistic I read was that it's less than 10% of Americans are getting the adequate fiber, how much they're supposed to be consuming, major risk factor for heart disease. And then they also provide you with high levels of protein. So while on the one hand, you can have cuts of meat, animal proteins, which are very nutrient dense and can provide a wonderful source of protein, minerals into the human body, legumes can do this without the saturated fats. Without some of the other concerns that are going to elevate your risk factors. Beyond that, then we're going to be looking at whole grains, whole grain intake as opposed to refined grains. And then afterwards, the literature kind of varies on this one and what kind of a role it plays, but low-fat dairy products as well, because it's very nutrient dense and also has high protein intake to it. Those are the promoters. So that's kind of a short answer to that question of the general overall pattern of what you're looking at and what you want to try to consume to reduce risk of heart disease.
So Dustin, when thinking about this, and again, a lot of times, as a clinician, if a patient comes into my office, I'm like, listen, bro, like I want you to eat things that grow on trees and grow in the ground, right? And then my patients will come back to me and they'll be like, well, what exactly do you want me to get from
They
the
want
produce
specific.
section. They want
Yes,
specifics.
they
Like,
do.
which fruit is it, right? So like one time somebody told me, well, pineapple has a lot of glucose. You probably don't want to eat pineapple. Maybe you want to try a different fruit, with a lower glycemic index. But what specific fruits? Like, what are your top 3 fruits that people should eat?
Okay, I love what you just said there. Really quick and late before I answer that question. We don't consume nutrients. We eat foods.
Yeah.
We eat foods. So for working with patients in particular, we can be as nerdy as we like in talking about the nutrients and the biochemical mechanisms, which is helpful in some respect for people. But people eat foods, and that's what they want to hear. So I completely agree. That is 100% what we try to go for in practical advice to people.
Yeah.
My top 3 fruits. Now, practically from a data standpoint, I would just say anything. Frozen fruits, whole fruits are the best to go for, first and foremost. But even if they can't do that, frozen fruits, get a bag of frozen fruits, and you can add them in some capacity into your diet if you want to, because the retention of nutrients is very good, and there's not really any concern related to that.
I love that takeaway.
Yeah.
That's such a great takeaway.
Yeah.
The major concern, as you're going a little further down the list of recommendations, would be consume less of your fruit that's in the form of a juice, just because they're likely to consume a lot of extra added sugar as a result of that, get more calories, and then the least of which would be highly processed fruits. Like, we would not recommend consuming a strawberry Pop-Tart to try to get any of your fruit intake out of it.
Right.
That's bottom
That's
of the barrel.
silly.
Yeah.
Bottom of the barrel as much as possible.
Understood.
So in terms of like fruits, however, for like, what are the best ones?
Yeah.
The answer is honestly going to be, what do you like?
Yeah.
Jamie, what is your favorite fruit to eat?
Oh man, that's such a great question. Probably banana and berries.
Okay.
Blueberries,
Gosh.
strawberries.
Love
raspberries.
bananas, love strawberries.
Yeah.
Savannah,
This is why we're such good friends. I literally would say the exact same thing.
the same answer?
Well, that's what we had for breakfast.
Right.
Okay, so in that respect, like taking bananas, there's all these things that people get into when you're looking at, for example, the glycemic index of fruit, or you're going to be looking at, how much carbohydrate, what are the calories per serving on this one, what's the fiber intake. All of those things are definitely going to vary. So it kind of depends on what the goal of the person is.
Yeah.
Do you want to consume more fiber? Come to my house and come take a bag of guavas home with you. Guavas are very high up there. They have 9 grams of fiber per cup. On the lower end, you're going to see something like strawberries or oranges, which are still wonderful and nutritious, but they don't have as much fiber. They have, by comparison, about 3 to 4 grams of fiber per cup to them. You could look at fruits in terms of, so this could be for somebody who has diabetes. If you're wanting to consume more fruit, you still have to manage your blood sugar.
Right.
Because diabetes is a huge risk factor related to heart disease. So a person could go for low-carb fruits, like we call them, which in that instance, it would be something like watermelon, for example, has like 7.5 grams of carbohydrate per 100 grams of serving, just as a way that we measure it out. And then higher instances of higher carb fruits would be bananas.
Yeah.
It's actually pretty high up there. The highest carb fruits that I can think of off the top of my head, bananas, pineapple, mango, and then I don't remember another one after that.
All the good ones.
All the good ones.
All the other good ones, the really delicious ones.
I see.
But
Right.
the thing is practically for most people, if you don't have diabetes, that's not really something you should be concerned about. For most people, the concern is just the intake, is just getting enough at all to begin with.
And then the higher the carbohydrate, the higher the glycemic index, right? So
not necessarily.
Really?
It's a configuration both of the carbohydrate content, the fiber content, and then these other things that we don't quite understand for certain. But it's very difficult to gauge out exactly how your blood sugars are going to respond to it. They are highly variable. I just recently read a study that was looking at blood glucose monitors and trying to help people get an idea for using them to track and see how their body responds to it. Now, I'll just say before I go further than that, dietitian's advice, we don't advise people who do not have diabetes to wear a continuous blood glucose monitor. There's no evidence to suggest that does anything to improve your diet, that does anything to improve your lifestyle. But for people...
we're going to have a whole nother episode on that because I have so many people that
are asking
healthy,
about that.
and they're
taking
wearing
off.
it.
It's taking off and they're getting this.
Right now.
But in that study, they showed that even within individuals, we call that intra-individual variability, even within the same person consuming the same food, your blood sugar fluctuates like crazy within a certain range. So in terms of glycemic index, higher fiber is likely to lower it. When you consume it with a little bit of protein, when you consume smaller doses, that's going to lower your blood sugar response. But generally, for people who don't have diabetes, that's not really something that we tell them to be concerned about or to monitor.
So just real quick for the audience, all glycemic index is when you eat something, it's how high does your sugar level go after you consume this something. Like a Snickers or M&Ms would be a higher glycemic index than like an orange.
Right. Whole grain is going to have a lower glycemic index than white bread is going to, or something like that. And the thing about that too is blood sugar is always in your body. We all got blood sugar. You. We all got blood sugar going through our bodies right now. It keeps you alive. It feeds your body.
Right.
It's just the problem how for people with diabetes, when you're diagnosed with diabetes, your body does not have the ability to regulate your blood sugar. And really high, consistently high blood sugar is no bueno.
Now, we spent a lot of time talking about fruit.
Yeah.
And we've been talking about fruit. What we haven't spent a lot of time on is talking about vegetables.
Yes.
Right? Because one of the things you said when you sat down, you're like, I want people to eat more fruit, fruit. Is there a reason why you said that as opposed to vegetables?
I think you said fruit and vegetables, right?
I did, but I did say, I'm curious that you picked up on that. I said fruit intentionally first. And the reason being is just because as a gateway to get people into a more health conscious mindset, fruit is always going to be easier.
That's very
fruit
true.
Fruit is always going to be easier.
Yeah.
For a lot of people, vegetable intake is just going to be harder. They don't like the taste of it. It's not sweet. Our brains are programmed. They're literally programmed to crave and desire things that are sweet.
Yeah.
So if, that's the case, vegetable is, and I hate to use this term, it's more of an acquired taste for some individuals who grew up and their parents, God bless them, didn't know how to cook vegetables very well, didn't know how to operate an oven, boiled everything. So that can be kind of a challenge for people.
Being mom shamed right now because I cannot get
I
my
am
kids
not mom shaming you at all.
I cannot get my kids to eat vegetables. Like I try so hard, but it's to that point. Like give them a piece of fruit and they are happy.
There's this trend, some dietitians like who specialize in feeding children in pediatrics. There's this constant back and forth that they have about like helping kids to eat fruit and vegetables, helping them to eat vegetables. And there's two trains of thought. The one being which is hide it. So like, for example, like take tomato sauce, but blend a bell pepper up into it.
Okay.
And they're getting extra that way.
There
or take rice and take cauliflower, mince it up, blend it up and put it into the rice as a way to like sneak it in.
Yeah.
But for other people, and I'm kind of more on this end, but this isn't my field of expertise, so what do I know? I like to think of it as teach the kids early on because again, in regards to cardiovascular disease, we do see some literature which shows that early child feeding practices later in life, we see that those can follow them and ultimately higher risk factor for developing some form of heart disease. Not necessarily because of the way they eat when they were kids, but because the habits stick around.
Habits.
And that's what they grow up with.
100% is the habits.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the foods that we need to avoid.
Okay.
Now that we've covered all the delicious.
All the goods.
All the
those
goods.
Early ones.
Tell me the bads.
Okay. So most individuals probably are consuming too much added sugar.
Yeah.
Most people are probably consuming too much added sugar, and in particular, we call them sugar-sweetened beverages, which refers to anything that has a primary ingredient of some form of sugar added to it. It doesn't matter what kind of sugar it is. It doesn't matter if it's sucrose. It doesn't matter if it's from honey. It doesn't matter. There's a whole panoply of sweeteners out there, and right now, people making a lot of hubbub about how we have to replace these and those. One instance I remember in particular was RFK Jr., but I had read somewhere that he said something about how we need to go in and we need to get the high fructose corn syrup out of Coke. We need to start using cane sugar. And all of us dietitians are sitting there just, bless you.
Bless you.
It doesn't make a difference. There's no data demonstrating that. There's nothing to demonstrate how this form of sugar is superior over this. All regular sugars, all sweeteners provide 4 calories per gram. They don't come with a whole lot of nutrients attached to them, so they're just ultimately energy.
Yeah.
And while that's not going to hurt you, that's not going to be detrimental, consuming too much sugar in the form of those beverages and those added sugars of any variety, whether that's from liquids or foods, it's particularly bad from beverages. Those are the first thing that we typically talk about and say, what does your added sugar intake look like?
So when we go to the grocery store, right? Say you're shopping for groceries and everybody goes down the box food aisle. I get it. What is the number one thing that we should look for in the ingredient box on the back? We grab the box and we're like, I wonder if I should eat this. We turn it around, we look at the ingredients. What's the one thing you're like, nope, do not get that? Like, what would you say?
Trans fats.
Trans fats.
The reason being is because earlier in that discussion where I was talking about how foods that you consume, they affect those particles. So most of the time, foods that are high in saturated fat are going to elevate LDL. They're going to elevate those particles, which put you at higher risk for heart disease. And they don't really touch like HDL, which is the good one that we want to preserve. But what trans fats do is trans fats are a double whammy. Trans fats elevate your LDL count and decrease your HDL count at the same time. So they're particularly predictive of heart disease, and getting those out of food as much as possible has been a pretty intensive campaign and a necessary one.
So if we have trans fats at all on the back of that box, you don't eat it.
I wouldn't consume it, no. And I mean, by and large,
you just walk the whole parameter of the grocery store and you never go into the center. You just look down the aisles and you're like, I can't go down there.
You're too good for those people. Look at those peasants shopping in the middle of the store. I'll actually point out.
And then I find myself, I'm like, that's how I shop.
I know, but I will point out, I don't think that's very sound advice, if I'm completely honest with you.
Tell me why.
The reason being is because I can find plenty of good things in the middle of the store as well, like even from processed foods. And if I'm looking at the back of the box, I'm going to be looking and watching for things like saturated fat content, sodium content.
What's your go-to processed food?
My go-to processed food?
What is it? Like when you're going grocery shopping with the family and you're like, I'm going down the aisle. Is it like the cereal or the...
I mean, for myself, my go-to cereal is Frosted Mini Wheats. I love Frosted Mini Wheats. I eat those all the time.
Okay.
I drink Diet Coke. I consume Diet Coke.
You do?
Oh my gosh. Don't get between me and a Diet Coke. Please don't. You guys come to my home. I have a fridge in my garage designated for Diet Coke and all the varieties to it. And the reason why is because I like the sweet taste of it and it's refreshing, it's delicious, but I don't want the added sugar. And if I'm feeling fancy one evening, it's going to get a shot of grenadine and that's it. But the caloric content that it gets from one shot of grenadine versus a standard can of Coke is vastly different. So I get to retain all that wonderful flavor, that taste. I feel like I get an ad campaign. Coke, pay me money for this.
You know, it's really.
I love it.
This is great. I did this project as a first or second year med student when I was at the University of Iowa, and in this project, I was looking at the median salary in the United States, and I looked at the median salary, and anybody that lived below the median salary, to eat what we considered healthy, which is from the produce section and eating protein and ignoring processed foods, right? Would have to spend 80% of their salary on food.
You're going to have to send that to me. I would be fascinated to read what you put together for it.
This was like in 2005 or 6 when I did this project. I still might actually have this.
I'm not shocked by that, quite frankly.
Because it was like 30 grand or 37 grand is the number I have in my head, right? For people and what the amount of money that they were making.
Yeah.
At that. And it was, I think it was at the poverty level. Like it was something like that. I can't remember exactly, but it was a significant portion of their salary would have to be spent on food.
When you're buying the fresh food, it's expensive.
It tends to be expensive, which is why I'm perfectly happy with telling people, get the frozen bag. It's fine. Consume the frozen stuff.
That was a really good point, because I think people do question that. Am I getting the same benefit from the frozen?
Like some items out of canned, like for fruits, I'd be more cautious because like canned fruits, they're going to be packed in syrup and you can rinse them and you can, remove away those excess calories from the added sugars if you want to. But that's why we try to make this practical for everybody, is understanding that a limiting factor may be your finances, how much you're able to afford and how much you can spend on it. Now, Jamie, to your point about how much of your budget you got to spend if you want to eat healthy, I'm kind of back and forth on it, because I got the public health brain of me versus the dietetics brain, which go in these different directions. So on the one hand, a very general rule of public health is that more money means more health. Generally, a couple of exceptions in that, but health outcomes tend to be in lockstep with how much income you make. So wealthier individuals, higher income lends itself to
zip codes,
better health.
Yeah.
But we see that in plenty of instances, even in low-income populations, we find that health literacy can be a buffer to that. And that showing people when they cook at home more, when they prepare meals at home, even when they use like these meals that they buy at the store, they can take them and they can doll them up to be something that is more nutritious. And a very simple practical example for, a person who's mindful of their heart health, mac and cheese. Kraft mac and cheese. Okay, did you grow up eating Kraft mac and cheese?
100%.
Okay. Yeah. I'll pound that stuff like crazy. Like if I show up at a house and kids have Kraft mac and cheese, first thing I'm going to do is there any left over? I can take that I can take that and I can tell an individual, take your Kraft mac and cheese, roast some broccoli, chop it up, take some chicken, go ahead and buy already cooked or get a breast, throw it on a grill, saute it together, slice it up and throw it into it. Now you have mac and cheese elevated. It's more nutrient dense.
Have you done this with your kids yet?
Tried.
You tried?
I do this with my daughter.
Like tonight.
It is successful. It helps. And the more they're exposed to it, the more they get into it. But it's also just good for adults, because on this level about how you avoid heart disease as an adult is all about promote more of this, eat a lot of this, and just put a limit on this. Now,
parents, we're also doing recipes on the podcast.
Mac and cheese with
you didn't expect to get this
grilled chicken.
You didn't expect this get this bang for your buck, did you, on this one?
Right, exactly.
So I educate my patients every day on a heart healthy diet. They're coming to me, they want to lose the weight. They're like, what diet? And we've talked on this, my feelings about the word diet. But that is my go-to. They ask me about keto. They ask me about intermittent fasting. It's a daily discussion. And I always start with, let's talk about a heart healthy diet. Tell me your thoughts. First off, what do you say a heart healthy diet looks like? And then let's kind of talk about your thoughts on keto, intermittent fasting, and these things that we're seeing a lot of right now.
Okay, so a heart healthy diet at the top of the list is going to include fruits and vegetables, plenty of beans, plenty of legumes. It's going to include whole grains. It's going to reduce added sugar intake. It's going to reduce sodium intake. It's going to be very cautious and limit things that contain saturated fats, which you get from whole fat dairy. Low fat dairy, great to include. Egg whites, eggs, I would just say in general, everybody craps on eggs all the time. They really shouldn't. They're fantastic. Eggs are...
I eat eggs raw.
There's no concern we've seen from eggs on that one.
Oh, yeah. Like if I'm quick in the morning, if I need to hurry up and get to
someone get him a raw egg
clinic or whatever, I crack an egg
I'm
and
gonna
I
cook
put
it first. I'm not a savage. I'm not Rocky Balboa.
I put it in a cup and I just swallow it. Oh,
what?
Yeah, 100%.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Next episode.
Okay. That's a food safety. That's a foodborne illness episode, perhaps.
Maybe.
What about everyone saying we just need to eat the whites? We can't eat the yolk.
I mean, you can. Like, if you're very conscious and you're very mindful about how much of your fat you're consuming, then yes, the egg white is the most biologically available protein on the planet, as far as I know. It's the most absorbable, the version that your body just loves. We say it has a very high biological value. Go for it. But include those low-fat dairy items, low-fat meats, which tend to be, like chicken or special cuts of pork, fatty fish. These are the top quality items that we would suggest for individuals consuming it for the heart health.
Yeah.
What's a fatty fish?
Fatty fish would be something like salmon, tuna. I mean, canned tuna. I got canned tuna in my fridge. Go to that all the time. Canned tuna.
Like tuna fish?
Tuna fish.
Canned tuna fish?
Canned tuna fish.
You just open it up and just...
Oh, I'm such a good tuna.
You're just a very go-to. You're a very time efficient man. I prefer to throw in a little bit of lemon juice because it's a little fishy for me. That kind of kicks down the flavor. And I'm a big fan of seaweed too.
You guys have so much time.
I do seaweed too. I
wrap put the seaweed in it.
I get the seaweed and then wrap the
nori
tuna.
Or the seaweed salad.
Yeah.
Either of those two
So
are
good.
delicious. And I mean, it's 30 extra seconds. It's not digging that too much into your time or your schedule.
I mean,
when you're eating it out of the can.
Yeah, we're very chic.
So what I do is essentially, at my household, every night is a different protein. So one night we're doing ground turkey. One night,
Heart healthy.
Yeah, it's the chicken, and the fish is another night, and so we're kind of trying to.
Hold on, wait a second. She said ground turkey, right? And you're like heart healthy.
Yep.
Like why did you say heart healthy?
Because comparatively to other meats, to like ground beef, it has a lower fat content. It has a lower saturated fat content.
Got it.
And the saturated fat is the concern because the saturated fat drives LDL particle production in your blood. So by removing that, or by, I should say, limiting that, that's, again, the goal of keeping it under control. The meats in particular, the cuts of meat that you're typically going to get more saturated fat content from are going to be other cuts of pork, like from bacon or from red meats or from other cuts of pork in particular. Those are the ones that just tend to be a little bit higher. Yeah. Myself in particular, chicken is probably my number one go-to protein. Second on the list would be tuna, straight out of the can with some lemon juice, not straight out of the can like a savage, like some people do.
What about game, like elk? deer meat, all those things.
Those are leaner cuts, but I just don't come into contact with them very often. But if I get a chance to consume them, I do. But like eating a steak, eating beef or cuts of beef or something like that, cuts of pork, which are fattier, fairly rare for me. I'd say, no, I can actually tell you, like the last time I actually had a steak was... I think for my wife's birthday, which was a few months ago.
Like a special occasion.
Like a special occasion.
That's how it is for me too. I mean, I grew up, my parents were like steak and potatoes, mac and cheese. It's like the second I turned 18,
love me some potatoes.
I have a steak like for a special occasion.
The Irishman in me loves the potato. So
I mean, I love the potato.
I'll have a thought. I might have a thought later on about a potato if we get to it and we have a chance to discuss it. I have something to share about that too.
I want to also talk about the role that salt plays in heart health. Do you have feelings on this?
Yeah. So in particular, the idea behind salt, and just to sum up the literature on this, sum up the explanation, one of the functions of salt, it is a nutrient. Your body needs it. But like most things, the problem is getting too much of it.
Yeah.
And so what salt's primary job in the human body is, or at least one of them, is it just exists in your bloodstream and maintains what's called oncotic pressure. So solutes in a liquid, draws water in, keeps your blood pressure where it's supposed to be. But blood pressure is one of those modifiable factors for heart disease where if it gets too high, it starts to increase the permeability of the intima, which is bad because that means more particles can get inside of it and develop plaque. So consuming too much salt is a problem because it elevates your blood pressure.
So can you provide us with some salt alternatives or tips when it comes to salt consumption?
Okay, so for people who have to be mindful of heart disease or anyone in general, it's everywhere. Salt is everywhere. It's all over the place in processed foods. I don't remember the exact number, but it's something to the tune of 70 to 80% of processed foods have elevated salt in them as a result of their production. So practical tips is just be mindful, look at the label.
Yeah.
Look at the label, and there's lots of alternatives in the culture today where people are looking for those salt-reduced options. You can see it on the label. It's what we call a nutrient label, a nutrient claim. It's following legal amounts of how much sodium is allowed to be in it. So you can use that as the simple method is just reduce it. Take the salt shaker away from your table. Look at the label and see what it is that you're consuming. If you're concerned about missing out on flavor, you can replace it with potassium chloride. Yeah. It's a salt alternative. It has a lot of brand names that you can buy. It's pretty good, pretty tasty. You can throw that into it. And then other alternatives just include using lemon juice to enhance the flavor, or cooking specially, or adding other items into it to just improve the flavor of the foods you're consuming. And I will also point out it is a bit of an acquired taste for the reduction. So for example,
for a period of time though, I feel.
Yes.
And then it adjusts.
I don't know what it is, like how long, what's the term for like when a person's like going with withdrawals? I wouldn't call it withdrawals. It's not the same thing, but
very close.
I've had instances where I've had instances where like, we're over at friends or something like that. And I have one friend in particular who just doesn't do salt in anything, and he's like, "Oh, here, taste the sauce that I made." And I take a taste of it, and I'm like, "That's basically hot ketchup, what I'm tasting right now."
Don't come
because
to my
he doesn't
house
put
then.
any in it whatsoever. So people can get an acquisition to basically perceiving flavor without the salt. You can do that.
My wife doesn't salt anything.
Really?
And so like every morning, if she's making breakfast, and she'll make eggs. And she'll make bacon, but she gets like, I don't know, unsalted bacon or something from Trader Joe's. I don't know.
She's my person. I love her already.
She will serve eggs, and like me and my 12-year-old, my 9-year-old will eat the eggs, and we're like, it's on the.
How about some flavor, Mom? Is that so much to ask?
But you can't say that, You have to kind of be like, is the salt around? Like, can I get some salt? So like when I make eggs in the morning, I'm like butter, salt, pepper, and
this
then
this is when you cook the eggs, right? As opposed to just cracking the egg in your mouth.
But see, that's why I just crack the egg and drink it, because I know that if I'm gonna scramble it, I'm putting salt and butter. Like I'm putting salt and butter, right?
You will never find a salt shaker in my house. Ever? I don't even think I've ever did a salt shaker with my kids. Like never.
So you don't put salt on anything?
Nothing.
So like, let's say you're like
this is what I tell my patients. Yeah. I'm like, that salt shaker in the trash. you don't.
That's
need
the
it.
advice
first
you
step.
give.
That's the
Yes.
first step. That's what we honestly
Get
tell people
rid
as
of
a
it,
practical
'cause
piece of advice
it's
is
in
just
their
get rid of your
food.
salt shaker, because if you see it, you'll want to use it. If you don't see it, you won't think about it.
And they're like, but I need it. And I was like, in 1 month, it's going to be just fine. You're going to be fine.
That's very interesting. So like when you are going on a road trip, if you're driving to Disneyland,
I know
and you're
what gonna
hungry.
ask. I knew this is where it's going.
right? And you stop for fast food, because
Can I blow your mind?
do it.
Probably, this is honest,
Mm-hmm.
3 months ago, 3 months ago, I went through a drive-through by myself for the first time in my life.
No,
I
come on.
No, really?
You are
A drive-through of like any food establishments?
To be fair, someone else has driven me. Like we on a road trip with the family, a couple times, but only on road trips. And then one day I was like, I really want a Chick-fil-A.
That happens.
And I was like, I was nervous. I was like, am I going to make all the...
Hold on, wait a second. Listen, what do the young kids say? Not ask Cap. Like, there's no way.
I am not making...
You've
know
never
what?
driven through
know what?
a drive-through.
No.
That's because it's Ventura and there's like probably no drive-throughs in that town.
I
Or maybe
am
you
that
park and get out
level
into
of
into the
healthy.
building.
You have never. That was your first time through Chick-fil-A.
Yes.
Well, how could you crave Chick-fil-A if you've never been there?
Because I was on a great question. Great question. My girlfriend and I were doing climbing a different mountain every other month.
Okay.
And she was like, we need breakfast. We need nutrients.
Climbing or hiking?
Hiking.
Okay.
It was climbing and hiking.
It's
quite frankly. It was
interchangeable.
big. It was like the biggest peaks in California. Leave me alone. It was great. And and she was like, you have to do a Chick-fil-A breakfast sandwich. Like it's a game changer. I'm like, I don't
they are
really
good.
do. I fell in love in the car that day with a Chick-fil-A breakfast
Which breakfast sandwich did you do?
The biscuit. It's
know.
delicious. On there, I felt like it was kind of healthy. And then fast forward a week later, I wanted that damn sandwich again. And I like had to work through it to drive through. I was like, what if someone sees me going through the drive-thru?
Wait, hold on. So you had the chicken biscuit with hot
If
sauce.
someone sees me.
Wait, and so
My
you had
whole
this-
life, I've like
My whole
dodged
career is
this.
writing
and
on
it was
this.
absolutely breathtaking.
It was
and then
so
you craved
good.
it again.
Yeah. So now it's like a special treat on a Saturday once every
How many have you had since the moment you've had the first one?
more than 3.
Okay. I'm just imagining her in the drive-thru,
Let's-
like pulling forward and
like,
like
crying.
being there and like looking at the menu, and then the person goes, "Can I help you?" and just like jumping.
Yeah.
Who said that?
Right.
Where'd that
right,
come from?
Exactly.
I mean, there's a lot that can be startling if you're not familiar with it, but
With a
hey,
drive-through.
you know that is good for you.
Thanks.
Good for you.
So to the point, like no salt shaker, get rid of it.
I think you're right, because that's what happens with this unhealthy food, right? It's like you get it and it's like so well manufactured that you crave it
Literally.
after you eat it.
Okay, not a point of surprise. They want to make a product that you're going to buy.
Yeah.
It's going to be tasting good. So I see this occasionally, like dietitians or other nutrition scientists bring this point up about how these companies, they design these foods to taste really good. I'm like, well, they're supposed to design them to taste like crap.
Right.
They want people buying their product. I mean, this isn't like some big conspiracy theory.
No, of
but the
course.
case is that when you are consuming, and this would be something applicable for people, is if you are going to be consuming out of the house more often, you're likely going to be consuming more sodium, more saturated fat, more calories, and there's just a lot of energy-dense things at those locations which are unfortunately not really conducive to good diet quality. You can consume them, you can include them in the right amounts, and for practical tips for people, it's something simple where we talk about where I ask, where do you love to eat out at? Where do you love to go? And Chick-fil-A is a common one. Chick-fil-A, Wendy's, and Popeyes are like the top answers that I get around here in Southern California. And a simple thing is just, what do you get? And they recite what they get. And I'm like, okay, one suggestion. Next time you go, small fry, not the large.
Oh yeah.
Next time you go,
Yeah.
small frosty. Can you do that instead? Little simple changes to get things started as opposed to going cold turkey or making them think that they're going to get in trouble if they are caught eating at Chick-fil-A. We don't want people feeling like they're breaking the law or something
People.
like that.
People. No
People.
names.
My
No
strategy
names.
always is like, take your plate. I want half your plate to be fruits and vegetables, and I want you to eat that half first. and then go ahead and eat whatever you
Fill
want.
yourself up on the nutrient dense stuff.
Drink a big glass of water.
That is a generally good practice. It's good for kids, good for adults.
Yeah.
I think we need to jump into some myths.
Okay.
Yes, I'm
love
very
myths. I love
excited
myth
about
talk.
this because these are talking points that I hear every single day in my clinic. And I think us having an open discussion about this is going to be quite insightful. So the first myth we're going to talk about, and this is the myth, this is what they're saying, fat-free foods are healthier for us. And we could interchange this. Fat-free foods, gluten-free. You know what I'm referring to. You go to the grocery store and there's like this big label. Yeah. It's fat-free and everyone's like, oh my God, it's healthy. I'm going to eat it, right? It's gluten-free. I don't even know if I have gluten intolerance or not, but like it's going to be a better thing.
It's fat-free, but it's got 1 million milligrams of sugar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How do we address this?
Okay, so I can address this in terms of heart health.
Yes.
There is a really well-known randomized controlled trial that was called the PREDIMED study. It was conducted in Spain, and what they did is they assigned people to dietary intake patterns of what's following after the Mediterranean diet, which is not terribly different from heart-healthy recommendations.
Yeah.
You know,
Another
fruits,
great
vegetables,
diet.
nuts, seeds, legumes, whole grains, lean cuts of meat, things like that. And what they found is that in these people, in the consumption of their diet, there was a certain amount of calories they were getting from fat. So it was upwards of, I think it was 25 to 35% of their calories that came from fat, but the fat came from plant-based sources. It came from olive oil, it came from the nuts, from the seeds that they were consuming. And they found in this trial is there was a significant reduction for those people for heart disease incidents, for myocardial infarction or something like that, attacks, stroke, tracking those incidents for people. So it's not that just reducing the fat. I mean, reducing the fat in the sense of like added fats that are, there, like slathering butter onto your popcorn or something like that.
Right.
I mean, there's reason to that because it helps you manage your calories. But healthier diets don't try to kick out fats. They include them. Fat is a friend, as long as you're getting it from the right sources, which is mostly from plant-based sources, what we call monounsaturated fatty acids, polyunsaturated fatty acids, things like that.
Myth number 2 is a keto or intermittent fasting diet is the best option for heart health.
So many feelings on this. So many feelings.
I'm going to sit up in my chair for a second.
I know,
I'm
like
gonna adjust
everybody
myself
adjust.
for a minute.
We're going to talk keto.
Take power position for a minute because
I'm going to be honest with you guys. Like, I'm being dead serious.
Yeah,
I've never been a diet guy. I've just been kind of a pretty healthy eater my whole life. I have no fucking clue what the keto diet is.
Okay.
I'm being honest.
Cool.
I got no clue.
Okay.
What is it?
Well, the first thing that you need to know before we even go that direction is I have to warn the two of you, is that there is an online crowd. There is an online community which esteems keto, low carb, anti-carb as pseudo-religious in some sense.
Yeah.
I mean, like, just you would not believe the kind of commentary that you get from people when they are talking of their esteem for the keto diet and how wonderful it is and everything like that. So here's the case. You got low carb, you got keto, you got paleo, but let's just focus on low carb and what keto refer to. Low carb refers to consuming a diet where you're getting about 10 to 25% of your calories from carbohydrate sources.
Okay.
Whereas for your average individual, it's going to be anywhere from, the recommendation is anywhere from 45 to 65. Unless you're an athlete, then you want to be consuming a little bit more than that. So the idea is you control your calories through your excess carbohydrates, which has some validity to it because added sugars and energy-dense items, those sweet fries that you get from Chick-fil-A. I mean, there's just a lot of ways you can get excess. The problem is, oh man, the waffle fries, but we never eat them. We take them home, we throw them in the air fryer. They're never done. They're never crispy enough.
You put in extra work.
They got to have a little extra work. We got to break the convenience cycle.
You are the first person I've ever heard of that doctors the waffle fry from Chick-fil-A. I mean, I do understand, like, if they're soggy, they're sense. Absolute shit.
This is why
if you get them and they're crispy, they're so good.
This is why I broke myself down for graduate school, to get little tips like that and pass them along to you and all of you who need them and be able to know that stuff.
Right.
I'm sorry, what
keto.
were we talking about?
Keto.
So back to keto. So keto varies because keto originally was devised as a very high fat, very minimal carbohydrate intake, and we found that it was successful in treating pediatric epilepsy for whatever reason. That by consuming this diet, where it was literally 90% of the calories came from fat, and then very minimal amount from carbon, from protein, just enough for basic needs, we found that it was able to treat them. So
epilepsy is a seizure disorder.
Yeah. So nowadays you've taken it, and keto is taken off as a major trend for weight loss. And the reason being is, again, the idea that you control carbohydrates, or that there's something inherently bad or inherently fattening about carbohydrates, which there isn't, because the goal is overall calorie modification. That's what you want to control. But keto does that by focusing on get the carbs down. And the means of this, just to give you an idea, like a practical measure, usually to do it, you have to consume less than about 50 grams of carbohydrate, and it varies according to the person, which 50 grams of carbohydrate is not that much. That's approximately what you get in 3.5 slices of bread.
Yeah.
So it's very minimal. But once you do, your body eventually gets into this state called nutritional ketosis, where you're using ketones as an energy source. And from that, there is this literature which just demonstrates how people in the short term are able to reduce their weight. They're able to keep their weight off. There's some findings which I think report how it helps with managing your appetite and keeping it under control. That's keto in a short nutshell.
So it's about ketones. Can you remind us real quick how ketones are produced in the body?
So ketones are produced as an adaptive survival mechanism for energy. So your body's main energy source is glucose.
Right.
However, there is an offshoot adaptive mechanism within the citric acid cycle, which I do not need to go into for this discussion. But when your body is not consuming or not producing enough glucose, either by gluconeogenesis or by consuming it, it has this adaptive mechanism to ketones, which is important because your brain can only use two forms of fuel. One is glucose, and the second is ketones.
Right.
But the catch to it is the fact that it's not your body's primal form of how it likes to operate, in spite of whatever keto zealots out there would like to say. Right. So in terms of heart disease, I actually just looked this up because I was thinking this was going to come up again when we talked about it. The current recommendations are for people who have heart disease or have already experienced an event.
Right.
They do not recommend the use of keto for reduction of risk of heart disease. Because the thing is even though on keto you can lose weights, and that's effectively what the trials do tend to show, is that there is weight loss. The problem is it's a very animal-based diet. And so the saturated fat content, the salt content,
way too high,
triggers higher levels of those LDL particles. And so the trade-off on this is, okay, well, my weight's going down, so I'm seeing a reduction in central obesity, I'm seeing a reduction in blood pressure. These are all good things that reduce your risk of heart disease.
However,
but consequently, I'm seeing an elevation in triglycerides, I'm seeing an elevation in LDL, and in some cases, a reduction in HDL. So based on that, we don't really have enough data to suggest and say that it's worth the trade-off. So for people who are at risk of heart disease, we don't recommend using keto as a means to accomplish that and reduce their risk of heart disease.
That is exactly what I teach in my practice. The keto diet is not an option for patients who have heart disease. It's just they're sad. They're not happy with me when I say it because they're like, look at me. They want to be proud. I've lost 10 pounds. I've lost 20 pounds. I mean, and I'm like, we're going to find another way.
My goal is always going to be patient-centered, and I'm always going to try to help a person accomplish something by what they want to do. So if they come into me and they're just dead set, and if you absolutely want to do this, you absolutely want to give this a try, my recommendation would be, okay, let's set a 3-month period. Let's do a baseline lipid panel and see what these look like.
Yeah.
Let's look at your heart pressure. Let's look at your blood pressure. Let's look at these other risk factors. And 3 months later, let's observe and see. So I can have 3 months later, a person has reduced by this much weight. And then let's look at that lipid panel again. And if the lipid panel has
through the roof,
it's like, you're not responding very well to this because your risk is still pretty high, even though you've addressed the weight factor. But if it's still under control, and if it's not that highly elevated, then on you go. Keep going.
What do you think about intermittent fasting? Those are the two that we got to hit because they're just all over the place right now.
Okay, I'm going to say something that may be somewhat controversial. I think intermittent fasting is...
It's a controversial topic. I mean, even in the medical professional, right? I have friends that are doing
books
keto
about
driven,
it. You have books about it. You have clubs about it and everything like that. To me, intermittent fasting is one grade level above disordered eating. It's functional structured disordered eating in my opinion. On the literature for weight loss, independent of caloric restriction, it doesn't have any benefits. So for people who use it as a vehicle to reduce their calories and get their weight under control, we see it's no different from any other type. We call it continuous energy restriction, CER. It's no different from CER, where you're just reducing overall calories throughout the day as opposed to I'm cramming in all my calories in this this restricted period, or after I've fasted for this many hours. I've not met many people who stick with it. I guess if you get a big sense of pride out of it, and if you lose weight, that might hype you to keep with it.
Yeah.
But here's a really funny thing about it. We don't have really good quality data about it because most of the trials that we try to run on intermittent fasting have dropout rates, which make it almost
so
impossible
high
for us to really derive what's going on with it, because people just don't comply with it. Because I don't like to use the word unnatural, but the human machine needs nutrition throughout the body. And so cramming it all into one time period, if you do it time restricted style, or if you do it just after long periods of fasting, I don't find that to be a very effective way. If somebody wanted to try it, I'd help them figure out a way to do it. But for most people, it doesn't strike me as a very sustainable pattern of eating.
So do you agree that going to the Taylor's Old of Time, 5-6 small meals throughout the day?
I mean, not entirely. Like for myself, like the routine that I've set into, because I mean, my family history of heart disease is awful.
Yeah.
I'm definitely a risk. You know, when we were talking earlier about those genetic predispositions, for me, the pattern I've fallen into is I do pretty well with, like, I eat 4 meals in a day.
Yeah, it's perfect.
I get a certain amount of protein in each of those meals, and if I'm running low, end of the night is a quick, either a Fairlife or some protein shake or something like that.
And you resistance train and exercise.
I do resistance train and exercise, yes.
Oh.
Our next myth, are all carbs bad for heart health? You've touched on this a little bit throughout.
So think of it, all the food that you consume provides you with calories. But think of it how calories also deliver nutrients in the form of the micronutrients, the minerals, the vitamins that we need for our body to optimally function and do all the things that it needs to do. And different foods are different vehicles for those micronutrients. And so that's the main difference of when we're looking at carbohydrates and what you get from them. You can divide them into what are called complex carbs and then simple carbs. Simple carbs are, basically just added sugars. There's 6 in particular. You've got glucose, fructose, and galactose. And then you have sucrose, maltose, and lactose, the sugar that you have in milk. And that's about it. And it's not super helpful to parse out too much. I mean, that might be another conversation for another day. But ultimately, those are really just going to be providing you with the calories, whereas the complex carbohydrates that you get from the form of fruits and vegetables and whole grains and things like that, they're going to deliver fiber, they're going to deliver mineral content, they're going to deliver other vitamin content that you get. And that's also one of the reasons why we're cautious when we talk to people about juice intake versus whole fruit intake. So for example, eating an orange versus drinking an orange juice, I can't tell you the last time I had orange juice. I don't remember the last time I had orange juice. If I'm going to have an orange for breakfast, I'm eating an orange because I like chewing. We get more satisfaction from actually eating and masticating food, and you get more of the fiber and you get more of the content that you might miss if you get it only in the form of a juice.
A lot of people take supplements.
Yep.
Right? I mean, I take supplements.
Yep.
You probably take some supplements. You probably take some supplements. But people have this tendency to think that supplements can replace a healthy diet. I mean, is that true? Do you think that supplements can replace?
No, and the general maxim that we follow is foods first, supplements second.
Yeah.
There's going to be conditions where you'll have a person who will benefit from that, maybe from a disease state, or they've not been eating very well or something like that. Myself, you note that I have fairly pasty complexion with everything. I can benefit from some vitamin D, so I take a vitamin D supplement every now and again, consistently, and my wife reminds me to. Otherwise, I kind of forget, to be completely honest. But the general rule on that is don't try to replace what food is supposed to be doing. You don't have to. Yeah. And there's a lot of really cool examples about this and a lot of really cool effects that we see. I was talking to Savannah about this earlier, about how there's this idea that there's something about food as the delivery vessel for micronutrients. We call it like the food matrix model. Something inherently unique about food that when delivered and consumed derives a benefit that you're not going to get if you were to just go into that food, extract the phytochemical, extract the nutrient, and then take it in the form of a pill. There's this really cool study that was done that was looking at the effects of elevated potassium intake in people and how it affected their blood pressure. What they did is it was a very tightly controlled study design. They had people come and get all of their food from a lab, and it was a crossover trial where they gave them everything exactly the same. They made all the food. The only variable difference was how much potassium they were consuming. So you had the one group of people who consumed the excess potassium from an elevated potato, and then they were randomized to consume the excess potassium from French fries, and then they consumed the excess potassium from potassium gluconate, which is a standard supplement that they take for it, and then the control. And they had people follow these dietary patterns for 17 days apiece, and then they were randomized to whatever other state it was to see what happened. Now, you have to understand and appreciate this. This is lab-controlled work.
Yeah.
Everything is maintained the same, and it's crossover so every person is serving as their own control group in this instance. What they found is that at the end of the study, they didn't notice any difference between any of the groups in overall blood pressure, even though the potato group was closer. And this is whole potatoes, by the way, like skin on and everything, the way it's supposed to be. I'm a big potato enthusiast about this, so I love potatoes. It's the Irish person in me. That and the white pasty skin. So they didn't see a difference in blood pressure at the end of the trial, but they saw is that compared to the control group, the potato group had the most significant drop in blood pressure. So it did effectively drop the person's blood pressure consuming these potatoes that delivered the extra potassium in the diet, where that was the only variable that was changed. And that, when you think about it, is fascinating.
Oh, it's so fascinating.
I mean, the French fries were a little better, wasn't statistically significant. The supplement, the potassium gluconate supplement, didn't do anything. It didn't do anything. It didn't change it at all. So there's this idea again, which is you just can't get away from something about the food.
Yeah, supplements just don't do much. When you look at the medical literature for even vitamin supplements, there's really no difference in mortality.
And the funny thing is there's a couple of examples where dosing excess supplements actually elevates your risk for certain conditions. Yeah. There was a very famous study that looked at beta-carotene supplementation, I think back in the 90s. I might be getting the date of it wrong, but what they found is that people who consumed a beta-carotene supplement were at an elevated risk factor, elevated risk for cancer, lung cancer.
Oh, wow.
Well, we're not taking supplements as medicine, and we should. They're a medicine. They interact with the medication we're prescribing.
There's going to be instances where you need
have
them,
to. Yeah, you got to take it really seriously.
Yeah.
So there will be cases where, like I said, they are going to be prescribed in conditions that they'll be needed, but taking them for the effect of trying to just think you're going to get super powered or you're going to be a lot healthier because of it, no.
It's a $13 billion industry.
It's a lot of money.
Crazy.
And that's an attachment of the wellness industry, and that is a big animal.
Huge.
Big animal. Whole lot of chakra crystals and all that business.
Oh, yeah.
doing not a lot for people.
But my patients come in and, quite frankly, a lot of them are on 10 medications. We were talking about this. 5 blood pressure, multiple for lowering their even just for their heart, let alone everyone else. And then they have an additional, and I don't know who wants to take this many pills, 10 that are supplements. And they're like, well, I was watching TV and it said it was going to have my hair grow and this was going to help my heart.
The ladies are
my
going to
gut
like me.
and my this and that. And they just have full faith and trust, And I get out my thing and I put it all in. I'm like, these interact. This is a no. This is why your stomach hurts. This is, and trying to eliminate all that.
Yeah, that's
take
one of
a
the things.
multivitamin.
Yeah.
Maybe, like you said, if your primary care doctor is like, you need some magnesium, you need a vitamin D that's been prescribed to you and is being monitored.
Iron deficiency, anemia.
Exactly.
I mean, that's another instance. Like in your third trimester, you can't get the iron you need just from food. That's one of the rare occasions where food is not enough. You actually medically require an iron supplement in your third trimester.
Mm-hmm. I think a big takeaway on that is if you are thinking about starting a supplement, check in with your primary care provider first. Make sure that supplement...
Always consult a medical expert.
Always.
So obviously we're sitting here with a bunch of healthcare providers. So I think the best thing to do now is to discuss some healthy swaps that people can make from an eating perspective. So what are some healthy swaps that patients or individuals who are listening or watching this, what can they make really easily when they go home today? What should they swap out on their table or in their cabinet?
Simple one would be start consuming olive oil. Replace olive oil as a primary fat that you consume, limiting butter, limiting mayonnaise. I can't even say the word mayonnaise without it making me gag. This is, by the way, this is a personal pet peeve on this. I'm not talking from a data perspective. This is a Dustin perspective. Mayonnaise is the most disgusting thing that has ever been created on the face of the planet. And if we could please just, RFK Jr., if you're listening and you hear this, please, can you target that? Leave the seed oils alone. Leave the sunscreen alone, please. The mayonnaise, that's That's what you really need to focus yourself on right there. Swapping out more of the olive oil because it is one of those MUFAs. It's a heart healthier fat that you want to incorporate and consume more often. That's an easy swap for people. Reducing the dairy fat for most individuals, going from 2% to 1%, going from 1% to fat-free.
And that's easy. That's just a different grab at the grocery store.
That's just a different grab at the grocery store of what you purchase. Another instance for just keeping it enjoyable for people, like for people who love ice cream or something like that. My wife loves ice cream. And so a simple practice there is take half the ice cream that you normally consume and fill the other half up with frozen berries, frozen strawberries, and enjoy it that way. It's a simple way to, one, reduce the overall calorie content, and two, increase some fiber into it, reduce the fat content to it. Those are very easy swaps that you can make.
Might be great for my kids when I think about
We
that.
do that sometimes and do like a little tablespoon of peanut butter.
Oh, wow.
And put that in there. And
normal snack like a peanut butter and banana. That's a go-to that my daughter loves.
Yeah.
I have always hated peanut butter and banana. I don't get it.
No.
Really?
I think it's disgusting. I do not like that combination. I love peanut butter.
And you love bananas.
I love bananas.
But you don't want them together.
I can't put those two things together.
Have you done it in a sandwich? That was Elvis's favorite.
God,
no. How dare you ask him that question?
Who would put peanut butter?
I mean, that's exactly what he just said is the problem, is he said putting them together is the same thing.
So good.
I do that for my daughter. I do that for my daughter. She loves it.
If you just put the peanut butter
instead
on
of jam, we do banana. Sorry.
What?
No.
Hold on, wait a second. Does your daughter eat the crust?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Like peanut butter and banana.
I'm going to make it on good bread for you, and I think your mind will be
You can put it on whatever bread you want. This bread could be like baptized by Jesus.
Bring it.
I still won't like the sandwich.
Well, then it would be soggy, so that would be a problem.
Oh my gosh. Like, oh God. Even if you toast the bread, even if you put it on a baguette, even if you put it on the best bread on the planet.
Everyone's entitled to their preferences. Never driving through the drive-thru for Chick-fil-A or I love pizza. I love ice cream. I don't eat them together.
Hold on, wait a second. Don't you find it
you don't mix.
fascinating that she was like, I'd never been to Chick-fil-A until 3 months ago, which was September.
No, she didn't say. I'm sorry, not Chick-fil-A.
Like 18 times since the day she went.
You are a grown woman with grown-up money, grown-up bills, and that's the first time you've been by yourself through the drive-thru, feeling like
it was empowering.
Oh, good.
We're gonna unpack that one.
Let's talk about meal prep and planning. I feel really big about this, but mostly because life is so busy, right? We're medical professionals. We have kids, we're running around nonstop. What works best for me to make sure that I'm eating the healthy foods that I want to be eating, I have to meal prep. So usually at the beginning of the week, I'm looking at the week saying, what recipes, what grocery shopping do I need to do? Literally having to schedule out when am I going to be able to cook this? And then prepping it all out for the week. Do you do the same, or how do you guys maintain the healthy eating lifestyle?
I'm going to give some credit to my wife on this one, because most of the time when it's like a Sunday and after the evening everything's kind of calmed down, that's when we might just pull out something and say, okay, here's the week, what do we want to eat? Like, might plan in advance and just like have an idea of what we want to do for the day. And I know other individuals who are much more intensive on their meal prep. I mean, these are the guys and gals who get out like the individual containers and it's like scoop of broccoli, scoop of chicken, scoop of rice. Here's my little individual packet of barbecue sauce for later, and they throw it in there, and that's what they take with them.
They got their scale.
And you know what? I think that's a disciplined approach, which is very effective in many instances. I'm not quite as intensive as that. The thing that we do at home, we do have there's a smoothie that I make, which it has a precise number of calories and protein because I make the same batch of it. It makes 3 of them at a time. Sorry, it's peanut butter and banana. That goes in it.
Of course it is.
With a little bit of cocoa powder. And then some protein supplement into it as well. That's a go-to meal plan for me. And that's very effective because I quite literally grab it out of the freezer and I have that for lunch on the drive somewhere, or I eat that really fast. So meal planning in that respect can be very helpful for people.
I was in the best shape of my life when I meal prepped and planned, and I would eat out. And this guy still does my diet, by the way. He sends me a new diet every 2 weeks. And he has measured out the amount of protein that I eat. So like usually it's 6 ounces of a protein, whether it's salmon, chicken, steak, whatever. And then I'll have a cup of fruits and vegetables. And then I'll have a cup of brown rice at one of the meals. And then the next meal, it'll be, salad, 6 ounces of chicken and a banana. right? And it'll say small
No
banana.
peanut butter.
No peanut butter.
No peanut
No.
butter.
No, and then the next meal
peanut
will be
butter.
tablespoon of peanut butter. It'll be he'll have like a sweet potato or a whole or a russet potato, and he'll have another 6 ounces of protein. And so like I ate like that, and there was probably a 6-month period where I was like extremely disciplined, and I was fucking ripped. Like I mean, it was like I was in the best shape.
Is
of my
it
life
also safe to
during
say
that
your
time.
blood pressure is looking excellent? Your LDL levels 60,
Everything was perfect.
if not 40.
Everything was perfect.
Okay.
And like now I would say I do that probably like 60% of the time. But like then it was like, and you're right. It's just discipline. It's like boom, boom, boom. And I would just eat the same thing.
There's going to be, everybody's going to have fluctuations. And actually, I mean, the principle of variety is not discussed too often, but it does feel good to shake it up. Like biologically, a brain, we like shakeups. We like what we like. And, you know, sometimes you're reluctant to try new things, but it helps people to maintain a lifestyle much longer. I mean, even for myself, like the things that I do is just, again, keeping in mind my family history, my risk that I have on hand, and doing those things, shaking it up, sometimes being more disciplined, sometimes not so much. I think that's a good way to go.
I just bought my 12-year-old daughter and my 9-year-old daughter a nutrition course by this nutritionist who does a lot of teaching to athletes because they're big soccer players, right? And so the next 2 weeks, that's what we're doing.
That's
good.
Start
Every day
them
we
young.
watch a lecture,
I think that's excellent.
and we go over because they don't eat as well as they should.
Kid athletes need the carbs. Give them the carbs, give them the recovery goods that they need afterwards.
Yes, you're exactly right.
What are some points that we can give to our listeners when they're going to a restaurant, for example, or they're going to be eating out? How can they make good choices? Because we know we look at that menu and we're like, I don't even know where to start.
Everything, this harkens back to something that I said earlier, whereas the more likely or the more often you consume your calories outside of home, the more likely it is you're just going to be consuming more energy-dense meals. And most restaurants, that's how they draw their customer, their clientele. They give you crap. They give you stuff.
Yeah.
You get a bigger portion. It's not just one thing. It's a combo meal of everything that comes together. A simple tip for a lot of people is, number one, don't keep asking for bread. Don't keep asking for the chips.
Say no to the bread at the beginning.
I mean, for whatever it is for your usual thing, dial it back a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that you have to, if you go to, Cheesecake Factory comes out and they give you those little loaves that you got for them. Eat it. Don't ask for another one. And don't ask for one to go home with you as well. And that's kind of something that people have to go around with. And this is the point of argumentation with my wife about this, because we're here, we bought the food, like we want to get as much as we can. And I'm like, no. Because if I take it home, I'm going to eat it.
Yeah.
And it's bread. I got plenty of that stuff already at home. So in that instance is mind the stuff that they bring you and give you. The beverages, go for a diet beverage. Ask for a Diet Coke with grenadine or water with lemon. I do it all the time. Yeah, there's my pitch. Coke, give me stuff. No, sorry. I do it all the time where it's a simple catch on it, because people will drink a ton of calories, and they can do that both through alcohol and through beverages, because once you buy one, your mindset is just primarily wired to want to get as much as you can from it. In terms of the food, the meals that you order, there's nothing crazy about having, let's say, a burger come out. And you slice that puppy in half and you just take it and you put it in the to-go box. You don't see it. You don't think about it. You're not likely to eat it. It's an easy, practical measure for you to still go out and enjoy foods, because who wants to be the social recluse who never goes out to eat? Go and enjoy it. But with that method, it's just easier to manage.
Yeah,
I split the meal with my spouse.
I do it. My wife and I split stuff all the time.
Split the appetizer, split the dinner.
When we went to In-N-Out, I always do a protein-style burger, just save calories from not having the bread. But we always split a fry. We don't get two separate fries.
See, look at this, you guys. The dietitian eats In-N-Out.
The dietitian
I just want you to know.
will
It's
go
cool.
to In-N-Out because you can still manage your diet. You can still do this stuff in the food environment that we exist, but it does take a more conscious effort. It does take a little bit more mindful effort to do so.
It's mindfulness, most definitely.
Yeah.
We do like an 80-20 in my household. So that's how 80% of the time I'm trying to be pretty strict and make the right choices. But I have some grace, about 20% of the time I'm going to go through the drive-through at Chick-fil-A.
Kids will ask for the sugar stuff all the time, like the
Eat
snacks.
a little bit of ice cream here and there.
The snacks it'll be the same for like adults as it is for kids. And even though, for kids, it's not an initial worry about their heart health necessarily, but that's the stuff that they're going to grow up with. And
that's such a good point you made early on. We have to be setting the example to our kids because You
want to know how the kids eat in the home? Look at the parents.
Yeah.
I mean, over and over and over again, like best predictor for it is you want to know what a kid's eating, show me what the parent is eating. Mm-hmm. That is what they're going to learn. That's what they're going to start with. It doesn't necessarily lock them in for life, but it certainly is a starting point.
I think most of the time it does. But my parents were, and I love my parents dearly, but they just never ate healthy. Yeah. Like it just wasn't who they were. The day I turned 18, it was like a flip for me. And I took nutrition seriously ever since. And now my mom comes to my house and she's like, what is this food? She like doesn't even understand anything in my house. And I was like, Mom, it's healthier options.
Savannah just kicked the door down, left at 18. I'm going to Chick-fil-A. You're never going to see me again.
That's it.
The modifiable risk factor for heart disease is absolutely exercise. I mean, on the panoply of those options of what you can do something about, exercise is up there. And it doesn't have to be going to the gym. It doesn't have to be regimented in that way. I mean, if you have the ability to go outside and go for a walk, I mean, we do it, go on a little family walk, go get steps in or something like that, as much as you can, whatever you're able to do, whatever your constraints are.
Yeah.
I try to drive that home with my patients every single day. They come in, I say, what are we doing for exercise? And they're like, I can't exercise. I'm like, can you open your door, go 10 minutes one direction and walk 10 minutes back? And they're like, yeah, I can do that. And
Isn't it crazy that people don't think of it that way?
They don't think of it that way. I go, you don't need to go to the gym. You don't know. I kind of like the dog walking I'm down with if that's all they can do. I don't love the stopping and going, but I go, put the dog inside, set a timer, 10 minutes, timer goes off, you turn back, you come home, and get back to your life.
I even myself, like I go to the gym 4 days a week on average. I go 2 days on, 1 day rest, 2 days off. But when I have that off day, I'm itchy. I want to move and do something. And it just, for whatever reason, never struck me thinking like, I got a junior college nearby and there's a track. I can just go walk at that. Mm-hmm. I never thought of that. And I was listening to some super celebrity fitness influencer who was talking about trying to get 10,000 steps a day. And I just thought, why don't I do that? That's a great idea. I should do that on my days off from the gym.
I'm definitely a stair guy, but instead of the elevator most of the time. Good. But when I go to when I go speak, if I'm in Europe and I'm speaking in Europe, it's unbelievable how much walking I do because of the design of the city and the design of the town. About walking, it's built for you to walk. And in America, I mean, it's not
so much
built that way.
No, it's not built that way.
It's just not. And so you go over to Europe and you look and you see everybody is kind of more in shape and skinny, and they still might have a cigarette every once in a while, but like
they smoke way more
than we do, they're actually walking everywhere. Like I love that. One of the things I love about New York and Chicago is when I walk outside downtown, like I can just walk.
Yeah, it's fun.
I'm already there. So anyway, I mean, it's your point is well taken.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for joining today's Heart Healthy episode. We wanted everybody to understand what heart disease was, since it's the #1 killer worldwide. And we also wanted people to understand and to take away practical points in improving their diet to be able to make certain that their diet is actually heart healthy. One of the things we do at the end of every single episode that we have is we want to look for a positive outlook on what we do on a daily basis. And we call it the positive pulse. I think today, it's more opportunistic and it's better if Dustin shares his own positive pulse moment. So Dustin.
I agree.
Okay. Yeah, I can share something. So you talk about the moments of like, what did you ask me earlier? What does a person really should do? What's the top 3 things that they should be doing? What I tell people is that you need to think about your life not just in terms of years, how money you get, but the substance to them. Health span versus lifespan is another way that we say that. Living a good life, not just living a long life. Living a good and long life if you have the chance to. So a year ago in March of 2023, we were getting ready to have my parents come down and spend the day with us. And I got a call from my mom. And my mom told me that my dad had a heart attack. And that was shocking. That was surprising. My dad's he's always been kind of high risk. We've always known that. But we got off the phone with my mom and my wife said, okay, let's go. Pack a bag. Let's go. Let's get down there. And we got to the hospital and got in there and I got to come bedside with my dad and I sat down with my dad and held his hand. And he just cried, and he looked at me and he said, "I'm sorry." I was like, "What are you sorry for? What are you apologizing to me for?" And he says, "I'm sorry for scaring you and your brother and your sister and your mother and Karen." And he says, "I'm not going to die. I know I'm going to live, and I just want to make sure that I'm around for the rest of what comes." And that, from my dad, that mantra that came about, what is this health for? What are you going to do with this? I want to see my grandchildren get older. I want to go more places with you guys. I want to get better, and I want to be able to do these things. And that stuck with me from my dad about the fact that it's not just having a long and healthy life, it's what are you going to do with it? Mm-hmm. It's going to be the substance to what you do as a result of that life. So that would be my positive pulse that I would share with you.
And he's okay.
He's okay. Good. He is on the mend. He came to Spain. We all went to Spain.
Oh, good.
He is doing much better, and God willing, he's going to have plenty of good years ahead with his family and his loved ones.
Thanks for sharing that very positive moment.
Yeah. I feel like it often takes a patient it makes me choked up.
Yeah.
Because you see it, we see it, getting to that point for their light bulb to go off. And for a lot of them, they don't get the chance, you know what I mean? And then the family's left. But the people, and thank God for your dad, that got to that place and is now like, okay, I take it seriously. He
sees it that way now.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
100%. Because this is stuff that we've been told for most of our life, but most of us don't take it as seriously as we need to. So thanks for sharing that story.
Yeah, of course.
And this is why we like to exchange information on podcasts like The Health Exchange, to be able to talk about stories like this, to hopefully impact your life. Dustin, thanks so much for sharing that positive pulse.
No, of course.
And second of all, you're a very interesting human being. You're extremely intelligent. You're extremely smart. You teach children who you have an impact on their life, but you also teach in a very interesting way, so much so that you publish a newsletter. Is that right?
I do. I have a newsletter on Substack that's called Public Health Dad, and that's kind of the whole point of it, is discussing public health, diet. I talk about the field of dietetics a lot, policy issues, research briefs. So if you want to learn more, come check it out. I have free and paid subscriptions that you can come and just learn more about it. And you'll find me a lot on Instagram, just trying to promote content that's educational and offbeat entertainment here and there. So, yeah.
Great.
We appreciate Dustin sharing that information on The Health Exchange.
Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely.
You were
Thank you
wonderful.
both. Thank you both so much.
We'll see you next time.